So, welcome everyone to the Spinoza Havurah service for Shabbat Vayera, and we're excited to have you here this morning. A few housekeeping things before we get started with the service. We do ask that you be muted when you're not talking, just to lessen the background noise. For myself, I don't mind if you use the chat during the service. I do know when Martin leads service, he does not want you using the chat because it goofs up his computer. I'm on a different kind of system, so I don't mind chats during the service. So if you need to alert me to something, feel free to put it in the chat. And other than that, we're going to have this is a participatory service. So I'm going to ask for volunteers at some points for some of the readings. And then later on, we're going to have some discussion on this week's Torah portion. Also, just as far as some upcoming stuff, I know we have a service. Paula or Betty Ann, do you remember when is our next service, that the one that Martin has coming up?
It's the 22nd.
22nd. Okay. That one should be a really special one. I can't remember if is that for a conversion or a bar mitzvah?
I think it's a conversion. Whoever did the conversion as a statement to read or something for the service.
Yeah. So that should be a really joyous time. So I really encourage everyone to make it for that service. And also, just a reminder, if you're not on our email list, send us an email at spinozahavurah@gmail.com. That's the best way to add it to our email list. So anyway, we're so excited to have everyone here this morning. So let's go ahead. To warm us up and get us into the flow of things, I'm going to share our screen. I'd like to read the English part here. If you'd like to, just unmute yourself and go ahead and read it.
How good are the dwellings where we gather, serene and vibrant as the gardens by the river, the aloes and the pleasant cedar trees beside the water. Behold how good and how pleasant it is for people to dwell together in harmony.
Hine ma tovu manahim shevet amim gam yakad. Hine ma tovu manahim shevet amim gam yakad. Shevet amim gam yakad. By the way, if you don't recognize the tune I sung that to, it's the tune for "Oh What a Beautiful Morning" from the musical Oklahoma, and I like that because I am in Oklahoma, but it's also I like it as just an opening because it kind of I don't know, I just like it. So, and who would like to read this one? This is Vishomrim.
And we, humanity, choose to keep a day of rest as an agreement for all time. For in 6 days we work, and on the seventh we cease from work and are refreshed.
Vishomrim b'nei ha'adam et ha'shabbat לעשות את השבת לדורותם בברית עולם, ושומרים בני האדם את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם בברית עולם. כי 6 ימים עשו מלאכה, עשו מלאכה, ושומרים בני האדם את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם בברית עולם. וביום השביעי שבתו וינפשו, ושומרים בני האדם את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם בברית עולם, ושומרים בני האדם את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם בברית עולם. And now I'm going to turn off the screen share for a moment because I want to invite us all to take a moment to look at the people on our screen in many different parts of the world, different places, and to imagine them filled with happiness and joy. So just the moment of connecting across the continents, across the places where we're at. And then we'll go ahead and go back to share screen. And would someone like to read this one? Bless the community which blesses us. Blessed is the community which blesses forever and ever. Baruch hu betakala hamevarak. Baruch akayal hamevarak leolam vahed. And now we come to a central point of our service. This is our version of the Shema. Listen, Yisrael, our people are one, humanity is one. Let us work together to improve this world. Shema Yisrael Echad Amenu Adam Echad. Kulanu navo latakein et haolam hazeh. And let us pause for a moment to listen to the world around us. Right now, where I'm at, I'm hearing out the window, I'm hearing birds chirping. It's a really beautiful morning in Oklahoma this morning. And I hope wherever you're at, it's a beautiful morning. You have a chance to appreciate this Shabbat for all the goodness it has in it. So. Well, I think this is a good spot for us. I'm going to do something a little different this morning. I wanted for a few minutes to do sort of a community check-in. And so to provide a little space for us just to share maybe a few things happening in our lives, so something maybe we're joyful about, something maybe we're concerned about, but just to give a little space for this. So we'll do this for about 5 or 10 minutes. And so who would like to share something happening in their lives today?
Good morning.
Good morning, Phyllis.
How are you?
Doing good. It's great to see you today.
Thank you very much. Freezing cold here, about the snow.
Oh boy, that's exciting.
No, that's depressing.
Yeah.
It's the other ing. It's the other ing.
Yeah, we're supposed to get a cold snap this weekend here. I don't think we'll get snow probably, but I think she's supposed to get more hard freeze finally. We've only had light freezes so far.
Too, but this is Wisconsin. We think we're the far north, so we got to go from sunshine. And yesterday I was hanging out on a beach in a swimsuit, and today I need my winter coat on.
Mm-hmm.
Phyllis, it's great to see you, but I have laryngitis, so I'm not going to participate. Just listen.
Okay. You feel better? You make me want to whisper too.
I've had an interesting experience the last couple of weeks. I'm a member of a Havurah. I helped start it 25 years ago, and I gave them a presentation about Jewish synagogues, and I had a lot of resources that you have, and played a portion of a service that you did about a year ago when I was in it. And I also gave that same presentation this last Sunday to a humanist group at the Unitarian congregation that I'm a member of. And it was surprising. The Jewish group, several of them could not believe that you could do this without believing in God. It was so ingrained in their DNA that despite all the evidence I had that humanist congregations make sense in terms of all the other things that are important in Jewish life. And then I gave it to the humanist group, and a couple of them also said, I'm not sure how a faith that is so built around historical figures, going way back in the historic Bible and all that, how that can separate itself. So I had the same problem with both groups in terms
Hmm.
of like, yeah, you got to believe in God in order to make this work. And it was like, I mean, most of them did not say that, but a few of them in both presentations I made did.
Oh, how interesting. Yeah, that reminds me, I had a conversation about a year ago with someone at my Reformed Jewish temple, and he just could not compute when he asked me to explain humanistic Judaism, it just did not compute the idea that you didn't have to believe in God. And yet what was surprising to me was that quite a few members of that congregation I know are either atheist or agnostics. And so I find it kind of weird almost that I mean, my guess is in my Reformed temple, I'm going to guess a good quarter of the people, if they felt comfortable doing so, would tell you that they're an agnostic. I don't know if a lot of them would say they're an atheist, but I think a lot would say they're an agnostic, or they certainly don't resonate with the idea of the God of the Bible as being a literal reality. They might have some other way of understanding it, and yet no one's very few people are willing to talk about it, which I don't know. I just find that strange.
Yeah,
Can I just? Oh no, you Stephen. I'll after you.
no, go ahead.
No, just no. I didn't want to interrupt you. I was just sort of really sort of thinking to that conversation because I'm very much of a humanist, and of course I was also brought up reforming, and I'm actually a member of a local humanist group, and of course in terms of trying to describe yourself, as a Jewish humanist, but I'm much from when I describe myself as a secular Jew, and there are people who don't get that. Now, I know Jewish humanists and secular Jew, there isn't 100% mapping, but there's probably not an insignificant overlap, and I just find that very hard for people to get across. And what I'm also thinking is years ago, and I'm talking when I was a teenager, I won't ask how many years you think that was, but let's say it was a 1 or 2 decades, and possibly 1 or 2 decades added on. And I remember somehow finding my mum telling me that she was agnostic. Now, they were members of the Reform Shul. And at some point, being a teenager and being a stupid thing, I decided to tell my dad that. And he was absolutely adamant she wasn't. He just couldn't countenance the idea for all sorts of emotional reasons. And some point later on, I think maybe with my sister, maybe with another member of her family, they actually confirmed, yes, that was her position, but that wasn't considered acceptable. But of course,
Hmm.
another thing we hear about with them is they actually get, well, I mean, I'm not whether you vicars, rabbis, whoever, and I guess maybe imams as well, who are no longer religious. They no longer faith. Might be agnostic, they might be atheists, but don't feel able to leave it, leave the pulpit or whatever. They feel they're letting their flock down. They've got all sorts of identity issues, and they don't really know how to move on. They try to say, look, I can do good pastoral work, they still feel dishonest. And maybe that's a subject we could go to. We could even look at supporting people like that. I suspect some of us know people like that privately. That would be something of a mitzvah, wouldn't it? That,
Oh, it
just
would
so they
be.
have people they could talk to, but they can stay doing what they do and know and feel safe doing.
Yeah, years ago, I mean, many years ago, 25 years ago, my wife talked to our rabbi and said, I think our son would be a really good rabbi, but he doesn't believe in God. And the rabbi looked at Sheila and said, I don't think that would be a problem. So there's some
Hmm.
acceptance that, God isn't a requirement. And yeah, that that's true. And another rabbi argued to his youth group that I don't believe in the God you don't believe in. So there's all kinds of space here.
Yes, absolutely. And I would say this very positively, despite our moments, what you mentioned earlier, Stephen, about your experiences in that one synagogue. I would also say before I became Jewish, I spent a lot of time in Christian spaces, and I still, for various reasons, do sometimes even now. And I would say overall, the acceptance of agnostic and atheist points of view in Judaism is still way, way more open than it is in Christianity. It's very few pockets of Christianity that are okay with that. I've found a few, but they're pretty rare. So, well, thank you all for indulging me on this little icebreaker thing to get us going. I thought it might warm us up for our conversation, but I now wanted to look at a little bit of this week's parashah. And I have two portions of this parashah I want us to spend some time with. And I'm going to share a few thoughts about it, but then I'm hoping then we can move into some conversation about it because the text is pretty interesting for a lot of reasons. So I'm going to go ahead and hit share screen. And let me jump over to Safaria. And so I'm going to go ahead and start reading. This is in Genesis or Bereshit, chapter 18. And so it begins. Yod-He Vav-He appeared to him by the terebinths of Mamre. He was sitting at the entrance of the tent as the day grew hot. Looking up, he saw three figures standing near him. Perceiving this, he ran from the entrance of the tent to greet them, and bowing to the ground, he said, My lords, if it please you, do not go on past your servant. Let a little water be brought, bathe your feet, and recline under the tree, and let me fetch a morsel of bread, that you may refresh yourselves. Then go on, seeing that you have come your servant's way. They replied, Do as you have said. Abraham hastened into the tent to Sarah, and said, Quick! 3 seahs of choice flour, knead and make cakes. Then Abraham ran to the herd, took a calf, tender and choice, and gave it to a servant boy who hastened to prepare it. He took curds and milk and the calf that had been prepared and set these before them, and he waited on them under the tree as they ate. They said to him, Where is your wife Sarah? And he replied, There in the tent. Then one said, I will return to you next year, and your wife Sarah shall have a son. Sarah was listening at the tent which was behind him. Now Abraham and Sarah were old, advanced in years. Sarah had stopped having her periods. And Sarah laughed to herself, saying, Now that I've lost the ability, am I to have enjoyment with my husband so old? Okay, so I'm going to stop there. Um, what I wanted to focus on really quick in this little passage before we look at the other one are the verbs. And if you look at the verbs in this text, especially what Abraham is doing, there's something that stands out here. Like it begins when he saw them, these men, these people coming in the distance, he ran to them to greet them. Then later on, after he has this initial conversation, it says he hastened to the tent. Then he told Sarah, Quick, get this food ready. Then he ran to the herd. In other words, to me, when I'm reading this, it's almost exhausting. Abraham is moving here, moving there, but the idea is he's trying to, the text is emphasizing the fact that Abraham is an exemplar of hospitality in their culture. In the culture of their day, hospitality was a much, much bigger deal than it is to us in most Western cultures today. If we happen to see a stranger walking by our house, most of us aren't going to run out and say, Hey, please come in, have a seat, have some tea, have some coffee. That's not our culture, but it was their culture at their time. And so Abraham is being depicted in this way. And most of what he's doing is not unusual, by the way, for their culture. It was what was expected. What was different was Abraham's enthusiasm and zeal about his hospitality. This was what a lot of the ancient commentators, they commented on. He was running everywhere. He was busy. He was fast because they were trying to say he was above and beyond what you would expect of hospitality, what hospitality would look like. So and I think we can look at this and say, this is a good thing, hospitality. This is a good, virtuous thing. Now, before we go on, I should say, before we read this next story, as humanistic Jews, we don't believe these texts are necessarily literally true or historical. Particularly these early stuff in Genesis. This is prehistory. This is pre-written things down. And so I'm not approaching these stories as literal truth. I am approaching them as sacred mythology. In other words, these are stories that have meant a lot to our people over the millennia, that we can mine for meaning, but we can also sometimes mine with a critical eye too. We don't have to agree with it, but we do need to grapple with it. That's what it means fundamentally to be Jewish, is to grapple with the text, to wrestle with the text. Doesn't mean we agree with it necessarily. We often will disagree with it. We often will learn negative lessons. And I'm saying that before we get to the next story, just a little bit later in this Torah portion. So before I read that next passage, let me tell you what happens in between the passage we just read and what is to come. And so this is So what happens after this is there's a conversation. Of course, there's the whole story about Sarah laughing, and it's kind of almost to me a little of a comic relief moment, a little bit. Um, and then after that, as they're leaving, then as these unknown figures, and depending on how you interpret it, some people call them angels, some people call them figures. But these people, whoever they are, after they leave, then it says that Yod He Vav He, that this deity that's engaging with Abraham, he says basically, "Shall I hide from Abraham what I'm about to do?" And so he has this conversation with Abraham about his plans to destroy the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah. And then Abraham starts bargaining with him. And again, from a Jewish perspective, I think this is a very central text, because we're not, to me, it tells us we're not supposed to always agree with God. We can argue with God, or the idea of God. We don't have to just take it as it is. Well, Abraham did argue, he negotiated. And yet, nevertheless, the negotiating wasn't good enough, because God was proceeding with his plan of destruction. Um, so then, starting in chapter 19 is where we're going to pick up next. And I want to think, and before I read this, I want you to remember this virtue of hospitality we just read about the previous chapter. Ask yourselves how this virtue of hospitality is playing out in this story. So, starting in verse 1 of chapter 19. The two messengers arrived in Sodom in the evening as Lot was sitting in the gate of Sodom. When Lot saw them, he rose to greet them, bowing low with his feet face to the ground. And he said, "Please, my lords, turn aside to your servant's house to spend the night and bathe your feet. Then you may be on your way early." But they said, "No, we will spend the night in the square." But he urged them strongly, so they turned his way and entered his house. He prepared a feast for them and baked unleavened bread, and they ate. They had not yet lain down when the town council and the militia of Sodom, insignificant and influential alike, the whole assembly without exception, gathered around the house. And they shouted to Lot and said to him, "Where are the ones who came to you tonight? Bring them out to us, that we may be intimate with them." So Lot went out to them to the entrance, shut the door behind him, and said, "I beg you, my friends, do not commit such a wrong. Look, I have two daughters who have not known a man. Let me bring them out to you, and you may do to them as you please, but do not do anything to the others, since they have come under the shelter of my roof." Now, I'm going to stop there. Before I go on, I think it's imperative to mention a couple things about this very often misunderstood text. The biggie being is that this text is not talking about consensual homosexual relations. Um, this is talking about something else. This is talking about coercion. This is talking about rape. So I want to be really clear about that to begin with. But also, what's important about this story, and to me, looking at this context of hospitality, is Lot, in his desire to protect his visitors, offers his own daughters to these people, which is there's no other word for it. It's evil. This is not appropriate. You don't sacrifice some people to save other people. That's not right. What I think is so striking about this, though, is this idea of hospitality. That in a chapter before, extreme hospitality is a very much a deep virtuous thing. In this next text, this desire for hospitality has a dark side. It has this other way of seeing it that's not so helpful, that quite harmful, actually. And so I thought this might be a good place for us to move into some conversation, to looking at the question of, are there times when our desires to do good become evil? Are there times that our desires to do the right thing might lead us to do the wrong thing? And so I thought we might have discussed this for a little bit and ask ourselves what we might learn from these very challenging texts. So go ahead and feel free to unmute yourself, and we'll have some conversation here for a few minutes.
Hi, this is Phyllis. So, I think it was meant for me to be here today. Wow. Um, yeah, I've had a year of trying to do the right thing when it comes to other people and really getting stung in the butt for it. Earlier in the year, I spoke with James about a dog I was training, a service dog. And the dog was very playful, and I hired a trainer, and the trainer was, coming to the house to work the dog. And one day I'm out talking to my neighbor and I'm comforting her about her dog who had been diagnosed with cancer and was soon going to die. And, I'm sitting there with this dog, and the dog, we got ready to go. And I said goodbye to my neighbor, and I hugged her and I said goodbye. And she actually backed up to walk away. And the dog jumped up to play with her and knocked her down. And she
Hmm.
ended up breaking her hip. But I stayed with her. I made sure her family got to the hospital every day to see her. I took them in my own car. I offered to cook them a Thanksgiving dinner. I did everything I could do. I went there the day she had the surgery, took her dog to the hospital in a service vest so she could see the dog because she was worried about. I mean, I did everything I could humanly do to try to mitigate this, and I got rid of the dog within 24 hours. About 2 months ago, she sued my insurance company for $300,000. And I just couldn't believe it. I was like, I don't understand. I did everything I could. And then at the same time was telling the whole neighborhood that I was her best friend in the whole community. I guess I am. You got $300,000 out of me. So it's just like, it's been like that all year. I've had people who I thought were friends that I try to do right by, and I get stung in the butt. So I really get that, trying to do the right thing sometimes, and it's just not the right thing. It isn't going to come out right. And it really made me question my faith this year, question where to put my hope, because yeah, humanity hasn't been so nice to me this year, but that's my story and I'm sticking to it.
Martin.
I think we're seeing a lot of the protests that are going on at the moment on either side. Those in support of Israel and those in support of Palestinians. I think that they're on the whole trying to, for a lot of people, their intentions are good, but they're taking it to extremes where they're actually attacking people and accusing people of things that they're not actually saying. And I think about how me and my mum were just 23rd of August having a cup of tea outside a cafe, and a group of protesters came over and wanted to engage us. And my mum just said, "Could you leave us to have our tea?" And then before you know it, we're being physically assaulted by Jewish people. And we haven't said that we agree or disagree with what they're actually there saying. And ironically, the name of that group was Stop the Hate. And yet we were physically assaulted by them. And the reason we ended up being physically assaulted is because they were taunting my mum and saying that she's an IRA kneecapper, which we didn't know why, because she's not Irish. And it was just literally all my mum said was, "Could you leave us to have our tea?" It's not that any given moment we have to be engaged in a protest, even if it's to support our own people. So I've seen a lot of that, and I'm seeing a lot of it going around at the moment with people. Even in the UK, people are posting about Mamdani and, oh, the West has fallen and all of this. And I'm like, I understand that you have some fears, but could you please stop telling the whole world that we're unsafe just because the most liberal the most liberal person has been elected in New York, you know? Did we lose James? Oh,
Here, I had to switch devices. My
oh
other device, the battery died.
Oh, I thought we lost you.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I'm on a different device. My son is having a college thing I have to be at right after this, so I'm having to do it from sitting in the car at parking lot right now. So
Well, we have some hands raised. So, Miriam?
Yeah, right. Well, can you hear me?
yes, we can hear you.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, sorry, as I said, I'm on a phone, so I'm not in a, like James, I'm not in a very ideal position either, so.
Oh, you muted yourself accidentally, Miriam. You have to unmute. You keep changing, taking away your face.
Okay, well,
Great.
can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, it's just the weird settings on my phone, or maybe I'm weird, but whatever. No, I was listening to what Martin was saying, and yes, it sort of rang a bell. I haven't had that particular experience, but it doesn't surprise me. It is very much, it's not just that you're not allowed to have this time off from protesting because somehow that makes you bad if you're not fighting for whatever cause you're meant to be 24/7. It's also you're not allowed to have any nuanced perspective to actually look and see human beings. I know that's not an original observation, but it is. But one thing, and that was struck me more recently when I was sort of down in Leeds, which is in northern England, which some of you will know. And there was this really unpleasant, well, yes, it was anti-Semitic, let's stop messing about, speech by someone. And, you know, it's very much clear that Jews, unless they were totally 100% Zionist or non-Zionist and totally repudiated Israel in any way, shape or form, were bad guys and they deserved what they get, which is absolutely shocking. And then a number of us went to an Jewish community organised an meeting in anti-Semitism. It was actually outside near the town hall. And again, there was this good Jews and bad Jews thing going on again. And that was quite, it's very much the good Jews were, totally pro-Israel, the bad Jews were everybody else. And I'm thinking, in both cases, you've got the good Jews versus bad Jews, and that was quite horrendous. And I'm thinking, what if nobody should label, no Jew should have to be a good or a bad Jew. Jews will do what they do, or some Jews will do good things, some Jews will do bad things, just like everybody else. But the idea of the good Jews, bad Jews, just shocked me, and I realized that was both so-called sides were engaging in. No, that just made me feel really horrified. That thing combined with the fact that because I'm involved in standing together, that means I'm a bad Jew as far as both of them are concerned, but that's another story. But just that need to divide and regard the other one as bad, morally corrupt, and just worthy of hate. It's just that's shocking. The Jews are doing it, the Palestinians are doing it, and we've got to speak out against that. But how is another matter.
You know what strikes me about both some of the stories we've heard this morning from several of you is that the people who are behaving badly in these stories believe in their hearts they're doing the right thing. I'm thinking about these people who may be, and I'm thinking about it, it's really on all sides of the aisle. I've been in conversations and in settings where people have said, it really on all from a variety of perspectives, people who are motivated deeply by the desire to protect the Jewish people, or who are deeply motivated by their desire for better lives and security and peace for the people of Palestine. These are good impulses, in my opinion, both of them. There's lots of legitimate concerns that people have. But there's something, I think maybe this story from Laud is a good reminder that good motivations can be taken in bad ways. And that's part of the reason I think my own belief about why humanism is so important for Judaism is we need a corrective when things get out of whack. And to me, humanism, what I find valuable about it is when I feel like my religious tradition is telling me to do something that I don't know if this is really right or not. I think one of the first checks I use personally, in my own ethics, is to say, how does this affect humanity as a whole? How does this affect my neighbors? How does this affect other people? And if I feel like it hurts other people, then I'm going to disagree with my tradition. If, on the other hand, there's a way forward that's helpful, then great. This is something to affirm. But for me, at least, humanism, I often see it as a correct. To me, religion only makes sense with humanism added in. As maybe it's said another way. I find it hard to relate to religion purely on its own because there's always this trump card. Like, well, God told me to do X, Y, and Z. If you can always bring in God into the conversation, or the Holy Book tells me to do these terrible things. But by adding human reason to it, I think there is helpful it brings some rationality into it for me.
Um, I read a really interesting book a while back called How to Be Good by Nick Hornby. And it's a lovely little book about how somebody who just wants to spend every minute of their life doing good runs afoul, you might say. It's a low-key kind of exploration of how always trying to do good isn't always good. So I thought that I might mention that.
Who is the author?
Nick Hornby.
Okay, I will look for that. That sounds
Yeah.
really good.
It's a novel.
Yeah, it's a novel.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's about a family, and the husband, I think it is, decides he's just going to be good all the time, and you can see what happens with that.
Well, I think too, this whole topic about when good things go awry, I relate to this a lot because a lot of my life is spent in activism, which is a good thing, I think, I hope. But it gets out of whack. And in multiple points in my life, I've reached places of burnout and have at times sacrificed other important things like my family, like my health because of activism. And so I don't know, this to me, one of the lessons I take from this text is that the harm that could be done by a good thing being done too much might be to ourselves. I think maybe another helpful thing is the idea of musar. Some of you may be familiar with it, but it's a system or an idea, a method of Jewish ethical judgment, you might say, but it's rooted in the idea of finding the middle path of looking at these virtuous things that we may want to aspire to, but how do we keep them in balance? So, for instance, a principle like humility is a good thing until it becomes too much, and then it becomes a bad thing. In other words, the point of humility is not to lower ourselves into nothingness, but rather it's to be right-sized, to not be bigger than we should be, but also not to be too big, but not to be, to be right-sized. And so I find that to be really helpful.
Aaron?
Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Excuse me. Yeah, some recent. So, I recently joined the DSA, Democratic Socialists of America. I gave them a little money, whatever, and their minimal, sign up. Problem is, I forgot that my wife asked me not to join any more groups, and I am prone to join too much, and I'm also prone to promise too much and deliver too little. Not a Jewish value. but I think it's even from Abrahamic midrashim or something that say little but do much, and so I'm trying to. It's been a challenge, but for those of you who know how I try to support this group called Roots in Israel, yeah, I belong to several environmental, and subscribe and get newsletters from all these environmentalism groups, and Buddhist groups too. And unfortunately, I guess, unfortunately, they're all coming out feeling, it looks like they feel that pro-Palestinian must mean anti-Israel or anti-Zionism. Unfortunately, they bought into that trap. Not anti-Netanyahu or, anti-fascism, anti-Netanyahu, but somehow it's got to be the entire Zionism is out. And anyway, I guess my thought is I'll be, what is it? If there are no labor Zionist progressive Jews, if we all leave or if we don't join, then there won't be anyone to give an argument in favor of socialist, eco-socialist Jews, and, labor Zionists, if you will. But anyway, of course, now I'm getting all the emails wanting me to show up at meetings and give my time and more money. So I'm going to have to disappoint them. But anyway, I'm so glad to have joined this Havurah and to be able to show up sometimes. So anyway, I'll stop there before I ramble on some more. But that's some stuff going on in my life and some challenges I pass.
We went a few years ago to a Democratic Socialist meeting and we're very put off. This was long before 2023. This was before the pandemic, I think. Mm-hmm. And we detected some kind of, what do I want to call it? Not nuanced thinking. And but we also, I on Facebook, one of the things that keeps me sane is I'm a part of a bunch of Zionist, queer, liberal Facebook groups. And one woman who says she lives here in New Jersey, where we live, she went to the Pride Center, which is a gay institution, really, for I'm not sure what the Pride Center does in total. That's not the medical place, is it? Somewhat, I'm not sure.
No,
well, anyway, but anyway, she was thrown out for being a Zionist. And I brought it to the attention of the person I know is closest to that. I also are on some Zoom for elderly gay people. And I brought it to the attention of the guy, which used to be associated with SAGE, but SAGE says, well, you have to stand over there. I don't know why. Made us change our name. But he said he hadn't heard about it. And I don't know whether it has any influence, but I was pretty shocked by that. But, I posted on my own Facebook page, which doesn't have a very big reach. I don't have a ton of friends. I'm not a friend collector, about an article which has the off-putting title of something about useful idiots, but it's a very good short article about how Hamas strategy is to win the PR war and how they do it and how everyone who believes in other words, the media has a sort of low-grade anti-Semitic bias, which is worldwide, and in other words, it's like academia. They they're very good at vetting all kinds of things except that. Then they don't vet the things anymore. They take whatever is given to them and they say, here it is, look at this. And, Hamas has very cleverly figured out how to play that system really, really well. And I've gotten almost nobody looking at my article, even though I have a few friends who I thought might look at it. I wish more people would. I phrased it as people who are tempted to use the G word against Israel would please stop doing that and please read this article about why that's not intellectually correct, shall we say. It's pretty bad. I mean, it's bad. I'm not a Netanyahu fan, but still, nowhere else in the world does somebody say your country shouldn't be there. And there have been a lot of genocides that created countries, including our own, and nobody says that to us. So, it's a kind of worldwide anti-Semitism under the radar, basically, that influences, that makes all this stuff, Martin?
Well, I think this might be a good, I'm sorry.
Martin has his hand up.
Sorry.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I think that Zionism is a good example of something which had, in its initial stages, a good intent, but at the same time was expressed or manifest through something which in the 21st century we would call wrong, because it came about with the explicit objective was to protect Jews from anti-Semitism in Europe. But in order to do that, it said that they had to establish and support a Jewish homeland through the colonization of Palestine. And I think that terminology, I mean, that's in the Zionist manifesto. So these are the people that created Zionism, said that they needed to do that they needed to establish the Jewish homeland through colonization. And one of their objectives was for there to be as few Arabs as possible in that new state. So I think that in the trajectory of the history of Zionism, we've gone from kind of understanding the need to be safe and to have somewhere where we feel protected from anti-Semitism, but we've forgotten along the way that there are many different manifestations of Zionism. So I think that on the other side, when people like Hamas try to resist that active colonizing trend within Zionism, which is very prevalent, they also take it to the extent and the extreme. I mean, Hamas is the extreme of that, where it's like no Jews, the fewer Jews, the better, basically. So I think that is an extremely nuanced topic that really kind of exemplifies this good intent expressed through evil. I don't know if that makes sense.
It makes sense, but there's two things I want to say about that. One, could you send me you're saying things I have not heard about the intent of Zionism, etc. Could you send me some?
Yeah, sure. It's easy. It's easy to find.
But also, the indigenous peoples of the world have an embassy in Jerusalem. They see, they feel the way I feel, that Jews are indigenous to this area of the world and are coming to reclaim as indigenous people. And the indigenous people of the world are saying, wow, some indigenous people got to claim their own territory. I know in this country, some indigenous people are able to claim some small areas of territory, which is wonderful. But they are like impressed that Jews could do this. And so I'm just saying, to leave out the idea of indigeneity It certainly should be in the conversation. Use the word colonization.
Well,
I want to push
Zionists use
back on
that
that.
term.
You know,
Yeah.
I'm gonna.
Yeah, but I
Can
mean
I? Can I?
that's
Can I?
yeah.
Go ahead, Martin. I'm sorry.
Oh no, I mean like it was, and I'm not an anti-Zionist. It's like I'm a I call myself a non-Zionist. So I believe that like there are Zionists who do not have that intent and might push back on that concept too, and say like, it shouldn't be done through colonization. It should be that, some other way, which I don't disagree with. But at the same time, um, if indigenous Americans tried to reclaim land the same way, we would also push back on it and say, okay, well, yes, you're indigenous, but you don't have a right to push us out of our homes. Like
that's not the land they're claiming. They're claiming public lands. They're
I'm going to
lands that no one's
interrupt
living
real
on. No
quick.
one's living on these lands. So just so anyway.
I want to interrupt real fast and just say on the indigenous question and how indigenous Americans feel about Israel Palestine. That's a much more complicated, nuanced issue than we're saying here.
yeah.
Indigenous people have a wide variety of views.
Mm.
But I also am concerned that our time. What I'd like to do is go ahead and end this part of our conversation now. Let's go ahead and finish the service. But then after that, we'll have more time for conversation afterwards. But unfortunately, I'm a little bit tight on time with my son's obligations. So if y'all are okay, let's put a pause on the conversation. We'll pick this back up after the end of the service. So let me share screen real quick. And by the way, though, I really appreciate all of our conversation this morning. We're getting into some really good stuff and some really good conversation. So I'm going to attempt to do the screen share from my phone. I don't know if this will work or not. I don't know if it's going to. Shoot. Okay, it will not. So instead, what I will do is I have a few. Let's see. Shoot. How can I do this? I guess it will not let me do that. So let's just do this. I'll go ahead and I won't have it on the screen, but I'm going to go ahead and do a little bit of our closing liturgy. So we now turn our minds and hearts towards those who need our love, who are ill, who are lonely, who suffer pain, who have been wronged. Let us pause as we call out their names. Here are some people we're thinking about this morning.
Susie and Karen.
For Carl.
Naomi and Sam.
Dan.
For each of these we've named today and for the others who are in our heart, may all who suffer know they are not alone. May they experience refuah shlema, the renewal of body and spirit. Mekom hakoak betokenu, mekarot habraka, meke vrotenu. May the source of strength that dwells so deep within us help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing. And let us say, Amen. And then let's go ahead for this morning. Let's take a moment now to recite the names of those that we're remembering this morning, those who have passed on. I'm thinking about Rabbi Jeffrey Goldman.
Mike, my friend.
Lynn Johnson.
May there be a good remembrance and compassion and kindness and love from all the world upon the names of our honorable loved ones who have passed from the world. Let us make a place in our hearts to remember their good names, a good memory, and let us honor them with good deeds. May their memory be a blessing forever. Amen. And now, if you have some kind of beverage handy, I have my hot tea this morning, but if you have wine, tea, whatever beverage suits your fancy, let's recite Kiddush. We raise our glass the 6th day, and on the 7th day we complete the labor which we perform, and we refrain on the 7th day from all our labor. We bless the seventh day and set it aside, for we refrain from all the labor which we have to do. And keeping our glasses raised, zoom in enough. Yom Hashii Vetkal Bayom Hashvi'i Hemelaka Asher Neesta. Vatishbot Bayom Hashvi'i Kol Hemeleka Asher Neesta. Neberek et Yom Hashvi'i Van Kadesh Oto. Kivo Shavatnu Mikol Hemelaka Asher Bakarnu Laasot. Savri Kavarim Vekavarot. Attention, friends, and we raise our glasses some more. Baruch Hahor Bakayim Bore Pori Hagafen, and we all say Amen. And if you have some bread handy, let us lift up our bread. Blessed are those that bring forth bread from the earth. Berukim Hamotzim Lekem Min Haaretz. Amen. And Shabbat Shalom. So I'm going to turn off the recorder, and I'm going to I will make Paula and Betty Ann the host, so that the Zoom won't cancel when I leave in a few minutes. But we can continue the conversation, and let me find the record stop button on my phone real quick.